What happens when a woman can afford a new car, but two police officers decide to accuse her of stealing it, claiming that a pensioner cannot afford a new car? Carmen got out of the car with a tired sigh, her joints aching after an exhausting 12-hour shift in the trauma ward. The edges of her light olive jacket were still damp from the antiseptic she had accidentally spilled, and the rectangular badge with her name and faded photo pinned to her chest swayed slightly with each movement. Her features, once so expressive, now reflected the fatigue familiar to women trying to balance a career and motherhood. Deep shadows under her eyes, hair pulled back into a messy bun, lips pressed together in determination. But her steps were firm and her movements precise. Just another Tuesday in her life. In the back seat sat her 15-year-old grandson Malik, hunched over, his knees pressed against his sweatshirt, absorbed in a game on his portable console. He wore a blue sweater with rolled-up cuffs and a crumpled surgical mask, which he wore more out of habit than necessity. The cold night air often triggered asthma attacks without warning. His inhaler lay nearby, a silent guardian, charged and ready for use. Carmen tapped lightly on the window. "I'm going to get something sweet for dinner. Just a couple of minutes, okay?" Malik raised his head, half hidden by his hood, and, without taking off his headphones, gave her a thumbs up. "I'm fine. Lock the car." She smiled faintly at him and turned toward the gas pump, which stood only 20 feet away, glowing dimly under a buzzing light. A patrol car was parked nearby with its engine running. Inside sat two white officers, Doug Renshaw, about 45, with a scar on his face, a tan neck, and the slow smile of a cop, and Tyler Kemp, thinner, about 35, with closely cropped hair. As soon as Carmen got out of the car, they looked at her. "Check her out," Kemp muttered, sipping his warm coffee. "New Fusion, tinted windows, sport trim. It can't be her." Renshaw snorted. "Yeah, right. Let's go see what's going on." They got out of the car slowly, walking deliberately slowly, like people who have worn the same shoes for too long and start to believe that everything around them belongs to them. Carmen spotted them immediately. She instinctively straightened up, keeping her hands on the gas pump, and turned toward them. "Good evening," she said calmly, though her smile was tight and insincere. "Is this your car, ma'am?" Renhao asked, looking around but not at her face. He lingered on her jacket, pockets, shoes, and badge on her chest, then looked up with obvious indifference. "Yes, officer," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady and clear. "I bought it a few weeks ago. Everything's in order." She reached into her coat pocket and slowly pulled out her driver's license and registration. Her tone was firm but not submissive. Kemp walked around the back of the car, pretending to examine the license plates with interest. "We've received a report that this car has been stolen," he said expressionlessly. "Just checking." Of course, Carmen handed over the documents, trying not to let her hands shake. Everything was in order, but neither of the policemen even glanced at them. Renshaw just held the papers between his fingers, his eyes fixed on her face. "Where do you work?" he asked casually. "I'm a nurse. I work the night shift." He muttered, tilting his head. "You don't look like someone who drives a car like that." Carmen blinked several times, not knowing how to respond. She didn't need to respond. She already knew where they were going with this. In the car, Malik stopped looking at the console screen. Now he was looking out the window, hunched over, his knees pulled up to his chest and his hands pressed against his legs. He knew something was wrong. He knew how to read his grandmother's body language. Her voice had become quieter, her gestures more rigid, and her hands were almost motionless. Malik silently took his phone out of his backpack, its screen glowing dimly in the shadow of his hood. His fingers quickly typed a message. "Problem. 2 cops. Magnolia Gas, 42nd Street. Please now." He pressed send, his only contact. "Uncle Eli." Then he turned on the camera, pressed record, hid the phone under his hood, and pressed it against his chest. Carmen didn't notice. All her attention was focused on Renho, who had moved closer, so close that she felt threatened. "Is there anything in the car we need to know about?" he asked, staring intently at her. "My grandson," she replied in a clear voice. "He's in the back seat. He's 15. Kemp leaned toward the passenger window, shielding his eyes with his hand, and looked inside. Malik froze, but didn't stop recording. 15, right? Kemp said louder than necessary. "The boy in the back seat looks a little scared." Carmen nodded cautiously. "I don't want you to scare him." Then she noticed something that made her stomach churn. A piece of paper was taped to the glass door of the store. CCTV temporarily disabled. System maintenance in progress. She couldn't hold back a sharp sigh. Not here, not now. No recordings. No prying eyes. Just two men looking at each other as if they both understood what this meant. Renshaw smiled, smirked. His eyes flashed. Well, he said in an almost playful tone, addressing only her. Looks like we're alone today. In the back seat, Malik held his breath. He clutched his phone tightly under his hood, his chest barely rising. That's how it all started. Something had changed. Carmen could feel it, like the drop in pressure before a storm. Invisible, inaudible, just tension in the air, a quiet rearrangement of threats. Renshaw wasn't smiling anymore. That was part of the change, too. The mask he had worn before was gone, replaced by something colder and infinitely more calculating. Officer Kemp stood directly behind Renshaw, his arms crossed over his chest and his jaw clenched so tightly that my heart contracted, as if the end of this night had already been decided in his mind. Carmen felt something tighten in her chest, not panic, not yet, more like strategy. She had seen men like this before. She had treated their colleagues, bandaged the bruises they left behind, filled out reports that never made it past the clipboard. Give me the documents, she said clearly, her hands still on the gas pump, her voice steady despite the tremor running through her body. There's no problem here. Renshaw didn't answer. He just stared at her like a fly he hadn't decided to swat yet. Then he threw her driver's license and registration at her. They flew through the air like dry leaves, some landing on her jacket, others sliding across the wet asphalt. Oh, you've gotten smart, haven't you, nurse? He sneered. Is that how you talk to the law back where you come from? I'm talking to you as a citizen, she replied, bending down to pick up the documents, even though her knees were buckling. You stopped me for no reason. I gave you everything. I cooperated. Kemp took another step toward the car, peering through the roof. Maybe she's hiding something, he said loud enough for her to hear. You saw her looking around. Maybe she's hiding something. I was looking at my grandson, Carmen replied firmly, straightening up. He's too young. He's scared. You're scaring him. 15, Renho repeated, narrowing his eyes. 15 years old, sitting in a car at a gas station this late at night. What kind of woman does that? Are you sure he's yours? Carmen clenched her jaw. Don't talk about my grandson like that. In the car, Malik was breathing quickly and shallowly. He had stopped recording on the phone he was holding to his chest and was now too busy breathing. He was clutching his inhaler in one hand, but hadn't used it yet. He was trying to wait, to not give in to panic. But it felt like there was no air left in the car. The voices outside were getting louder and angrier. Looks like you've got a problem, gentlemen, Kemp barked as he walked around the car. Carmen pulled her phone out of her robe pocket, pressed her finger to the screen, and started looking for Eli's number. Her hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the rage she hadn't had time to vent on someone else. Before she could press call, Renshaw lunged at her. With a quick movement of his hand, he knocked the phone out of her hands. It bounced off the concrete and shattered into pieces. Don't you dare call while we're talking. I have the right, she began, taking a step forward. But at that moment, everything shattered. Renshaw grabbed her arm tightly and pushed her toward the car. Kemp came around from the other side and grabbed her wrist like she was a dangerous criminal. Stop fighting, he growled, twisting her arm behind her back with brutal precision. Carmen screamed, not out of fear, but out of pain and disbelief. My grandson is watching. That little shit? Kemp spat, looking at the back seat. He's faking it. He's not sick. He's just trying to ruin everything. Get him out of the car. Malik was now breathing heavily, his vision darkening, his chest tightening. He tried to bring the inhaler to his mouth, but his fingers were shaking so badly that he couldn't press the button. Grandma, he gasped, his eyes clouding with fear. I can't breathe. Carmen screamed, he's having an asthma attack. He needs his inhaler. Shut up, damn it. Renho growled, yanking open the back door and rushing inside. With one swift motion, he knocked the inhaler out of Malik's hands. No kid would fake an attack just because his grandmother is in handcuffs, he growled. Malik exhaled dry, wheezing air, and doubled over, his lungs fighting for air. Carmen broke free from Kemp's grip for a moment, rushed to the back seat, grabbed the inhaler from the floor mat, and shoved it into her grandson's trembling hands. Press it, baby. Now. Kemp grabbed her from behind again and dragged her back with force. I knew it, he barked. You just earned yourself a real charge, sweetheart. You're hurting her. Malik shouted, his voice trembling and piercing in the rain. Oh, Now the little prince has spoken, Renho replied sharply, slamming the back door. How dare you? You think you're untouchable tonight? You think we can't get you out of here? Carmen's whole body was shaking not from fear, but from the rage she had held back for too long, a rage that burned her to the bone when justice did not prevail over the innocent. Then, before any sound reached their ears, the tension changed, the very air seemed to crack. Then there was a loud, sharp screech of tires as a black SUV sped across the wet parking lot, its tires digging into the asphalt and coming to a stop just a few feet away from Carmen, who was holding Malik close, his body trembling in her arms. The car's headlights cut through the light rain, flooding the concrete with light and falling directly on the two officers like an uninvited spotlight. Renshaw instinctively reached for his gun belt. Kemp recoiled slightly, freezing with his fingers on the stun gun. Both froze when the SUV door opened. A tall black man in a dark coat and suit got out of the car. He didn't run or shout, but walked with such composure that the grown men involuntarily straightened up. He was broad-shouldered, with a clean-shaven chin, his eyes focused and cold. When he reached them, he lifted a briefcase with a badge, opened it, and the gold shield reflected the light like a blade. Federal Prosecutor Langston Reed, he said in a low voice that cut through the noise of the rain. Take your hands off my cousin. Now. For a moment, everything froze. Even the flashing sign above the station doors seemed motionless. Renshaw slowly lowered his hand. Kemp turned to him, unable to speak, his mouth open but no sound coming out. She attacked. Renshaw began. No, Langston interrupted sharply. She was protecting her child. Kemp tried to find something to hold on to. We had reasonable suspicion. Tell me what happened, Langston interrupted, stepping forward and staring at him intently. No reason, no ID, no warrant. You raised your hand against a woman in front of her 15-year-old grandson. Were you waiting for someone here on purpose? He turned and pointed to the street, his eyes completely calm and empty. As if on cue, for patrol cars from the eastern part of Glendale pulled up to the scene with their sirens and lights flashing. The doors opened quickly and uniformed police officers got out, adjusting their equipment. One of them nodded respectfully to Langston without hesitation. We have orders, said the senior officer dryly. The dispatcher has confirmed. We are awaiting your instructions, Officers Rahau and Kemp. Jordan said evenly, they need to be disarmed and placed under administrative arrest, immediately. Right here. What? Rahau turned sharply. You can't be serious. Wait, are you serious? You're going to take his word for it. He's a blood relative and a federal official, the sergeant replied. That puts him above your opinion, but not above protocol. There was a tense pause, then two young officers in tight latex gloves approached. Renshaw glared at them menacingly, then with a guttural growl, he removed his belt and threw it on the hood of the patrol car. This is crazy, he growled. If she didn't want to answer questions, she shouldn't have left the house. Jordan didn't flinch. You just signed your termination papers, Officer Renshaw. One more word and this becomes a criminal case. As the two officers were separated and stripped of their gear, the sirens gave way to flashing lights, and a red and white ambulance pulled up at the far end of the parking lot. 3 paramedics jumped out of the vehicle. One of them, a woman with short hair and large eyes, ran over to Carmen and knelt down beside her. Vital signs are unstable, she said quickly. The boy is suffocating, and her blood pressure has skyrocketed. We need to leave now. Carmen whispered, please, her voice trembling. Tears streamed down her face as she cried softly. Jordan walked over and put his hand on her shoulder. His voice was soft but warm. You're coming with us. You're safe now. He helped her to her feet, and the paramedics carefully laid Malik on a stretcher. The boy found his grandmother's fingers and squeezed them tightly. His breathing began to even out, but his face remained pale, his eyes wide open, still ready for something to go wrong. Jordan leaned down and gently stroked Malik's forehead. You're a good boy, kid, he said. You're a real man. When Carmen and Malik got into the ambulance, she turned to Jordan. How did you know to come here? She asked. Malik texted me, Jordan replied. He wrote everything down. You probably thought no one saw anything, but the microphones in the ambulance turn on when the doors close and the blue lights come on. Carmen glanced one last time out the back window, past the gathering crowd, past the place where her ordinary evening had turned into a war zone. She saw Rahau in handcuffs, shouting something at an officer who didn't respond. Camp sat on the curb with his head in his hands. Jordan stood alone under the spotlights, his arms crossed over his chest and his jaw clenched like granite. The streets of East Glendale were no longer quiet, not tonight. The Federal Council conference room was quiet. Lamps hummed faintly overhead, casting a cold light on the polished table that stretched the length of the room like a courtroom bench. There was a chill in the air, not just from the ventilation, but from the faint, familiar smell of disinfectant. This place was not designed for comfort. It was designed for decision-making. That morning, every corner of the room seemed frozen, waiting. Carmen sat tensely, straight in a soft chair that felt harder than stone. Her left shoulder was wrapped in clean gauze, visible from under the elongated collar of her jacket. Her face was pale but motionless. The tears had dried. That had happened several hours ago. She sat with her back straight and her jaw clenched. She had not come here for sympathy. She had come here for revenge. Next to her sat Malik, small and motionless. A plastic cup of juice trembled slightly in his hands. The hall was crowded, but not with cameras, just ordinary people. People who knew the truth even before it hit the newspapers. Nurses. Teachers with tired eyes. Mothers hugging their children. Carmen sat in the front row, her arm in a sling, her posture straight. Next to her, Malik, quiet, small, but composed, held her hands. He was wearing a button-down shirt and polished shoes. His face was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched like a man 3 times his age. Prosecutor Raymond Cole entered through a side door, not in a suit, but in a gray sweater and slacks. Today, he was not an authoritative official. He was a brother, an uncle, a citizen. He nodded to Carmen. She nodded back. That was enough. The judge entered, banged his gavel, and the names were read. The prosecution did not begin with speeches. They played the recording from the phone. There it was, grainy, unedited. Carmen's voice was calm until her phone fell to the floor. The sound of her body hitting the hood of the car. Malik's scream. His ragged breathing. Then Kim's voice, mocking, cheerful. Unedited. No questions. There were sighs in the courtroom, not dramatic, just tired. The defense attorneys tried to distort the facts. One called Carmen hostile. Another suggested that Malik had been coached. But then a gas station employee took the stand, a quiet, elderly white man. The cameras hadn't been working for weeks. He fixed them that day. His testimony matched Malik's audio recording perfectly. The truth was undeniable. When Carmen took the stand, her voice was steady, restrained. She spoke like someone who had lived through that night 1,000 times. I wasn't afraid for myself, she said. I was afraid they wouldn't let me get my grandson's inhaler in time. Malik did not testify, but his recording was played. His quiet, pleading voice. His heavy breathing. And then the insults. You think you're special? A little man pretending he was attacked to get an inhaler? Your grandmother is just another social worker. When the jury returned, there was no suspense after their deliberations. One word was spoken. Guilty. Excessive use of force. Endangering the life of a child. Assault. False statement. The judge looked directly at the defendants. You are stripped of all law enforcement powers. You will remain in custody until sentencing. The court finds you not only guilty, but unworthy of the badge you once wore. Carmen didn't smile. Neither did Raymond. But something in the room had changed, like the air pressure before a storm. Like tension held back for decades had finally been released. A crowd gathered outside the courthouse. It wasn't a demonstration. People weren't shouting. They just stood shoulder to shoulder and watched. Carmen and Malik quietly left. Several people applauded. One woman reached out and gently touched Carmen's hand. Thank you, she whispered, for not staying silent. Carmen looked at her grandson. He behaved like a man. Raymond approached and handed Malik a small framed object. Inside was a bent police badge sealed in glass. This isn't a trophy, he said. I left the police 15 years ago. That's when I realized that a badge doesn't protect everyone. But maybe someday it will, if people like you stand up for your rights. Malik hesitated. Then he reached out and took the badge. He pressed it to his chest. Have you ever been underestimated because of your appearance? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story about justice, click the like button and subscribe to read more inspiring stories that remind us of what really matters in life. And let us know which country you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you.